Today I'm going to give you 7 quick tips to improve your typography skills in Affinity Publisher 2. So if you're designing a book, a magazine, or any other type of long-form document with lots of text, then this video is going to be perfect for you. So without any further ado, let's jump right in. So for this example, I'm going to be using something that I wrote about a girl who collects vintage high school yearbooks. It's pretty cool, right? Anyway, we're just going to be using this raw text as an example. One way to make your text more sophisticated is to use optical margin alignment. This allows you to show quotation marks, hyphens, and certain letters like A, B, W, and Y outside of the normal text area. And the reason we do this is because when we're looking at blocks of text, our eye creates an imaginary margin. And when there's punctuation, it tends to make the margin look a little bit jagged. But by turning on optical alignment, we can force certain characters like quotation marks to hang outside of the text margin. This creates a perfectly aligned margin for the human eye. Now you can find the optical alignment tool on the character tab on the studio panel, but if you don't see it, go up top to the menu, select window, select text, and select character. And then down at the bottom you'll find optical alignment. All you have to do is select the paragraph or paragraphs that you want to apply optical alignment to, select manual from the drop-down menu, and your optical alignment should be applied. Now, most people don't know this, but there are 2 types of apostrophes. And if you learn the difference between the 2, it's going to really make your typography stand out. One is straight and the other is curved. Here's what you need to know about them. They both have the same meaning, so the choice of which one to use comes down to context and style. The curly one feels more elegant and is more common in books, magazines, and other printed matter, while the straight one is usually seen as a bit more crude and is more common online. Now, as a designer, you may not be responsible for grammar and punctuation. That's the job of the editor. However, I see text all the time that uses a combination of the 2, which honestly looks really sloppy. So if you're aware of the 2 apostrophes and know how to change them, your typography will look a lot more polished. Oh, and one last tip, I like to use the Find tool by pressing Command F and then replacing all of them at once if need be. Alright, so let's talk about tracking. Tracking is a tool on the character panel that lets you increase or decrease the spacing between a range of characters, or as much as entire paragraphs. So what's the difference between kerning and tracking? While kerning allows you to adjust the spacing between individual characters, tracking lets you adjust the space evenly across multiple characters at the same time. This comes in really handy when you want to tighten or loosen up a sentence in order to get rid of a widow or an orphan. However, I recommend not going above or below 10% when tracking blocks of text. Anything more than that can start to look a little bit weird. That said, you can get away with more tracking on a headline, but only with certain fonts. So I feel like leading is one of those things that's easy to overlook, but mastering it is essential to good typography. Now keep an eye on the top paragraph while I adjust the leading by 2 points. Simply put, leading is the space between lines of text. In the old days, when they used to set type by hand, they placed strips of lead between wood or metal characters to give the text some extra breathing room. And even though the days of hand-setting type are gone, the name leading has stuck around. Now, I'd advise not to accept a font's default leading. Instead, you should play around with it to find what works best for you. The ideal leading for body copy tends to be about 2 to 4 points greater than the font size. However, that's just a starting point, and you should definitely adjust it by tiny degrees to find the sweet spot. Just remember, the goal is to make the text more readable. Too much leading can make your text feel too airy, but too little can make it feel too tight. There's a little-known tool in Affinity Publisher that lets you see all of the hidden characters in a text frame. It's called Show Special Characters. To turn it on, go up top to the menu, find Text, and find Show Special Characters. Now those blue dots represent spaces. If there's an extra space, you'll see 2 dots. This is a useful tool for cleaning up your text document. It can be difficult to find not just extra spaces on the screen, but other types of invisible formatting as well, like tabs, forced line breaks, etc. Ultimately, it gives you more control over your text, so there are no surprises once you go to print. Alright, while we're on the topic of special characters, let's talk about white space. Because sometimes the regular size space you get from hitting the space bar is too much, or sometimes maybe it's not enough. For example, let's say you have a caption that looks like this, and you want less space between CA and 1941. In this case, you would close the gap, go up top to the menu, find Text, find Insert, and find Spaces and Tabs. Now you can choose between a thin space, a quarter space, and more. This gives you a much greater degree of precision between characters where it doesn't make sense to kern and yet a full space is not needed. And finally, my last tip for you is to make printouts. If the final destination is print and you're working with lots of text, you need to be printing out a few pages at 100% to see how that text is going to look on the page. Because it's way too difficult to judge things like leading, tracking, and font size just by looking at the screen alone. These can be cheap Xeroxes that cost 25 cents. It's not about the quality. It's about seeing how your text looks on the page versus on a computer screen. You'd be surprised at what you discover. So that's it. I hope you found this useful. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.